Most people don't notice the change immediately. It doesn't arrive as a dramatic personality shift. You don't wake up one day angry at the world. Instead, it shows up in small moments. A simple question feels louder than it should. Background noise suddenly feels exhausting. Someone interrupts you, and your reaction comes out faster than you expected. Later, you regret it. You think, why am I becoming like this? I used to be calmer. Am I just getting harder to live with? Here is the truth. After 40, irritation is often biological, not emotional. You're not losing character. Your nervous system is losing buffer capacity. In your 20s and 30s, your brain had extra regulation energy. It could absorb stress, noise, and interruptions without reacting immediately. Now the same brain is working with tighter margins. Sleep becomes lighter, hormonal rhythms shift, mental recovery slows down, so the brain protects itself. It reacts faster, not because you want conflict, but because it has less energy to delay reaction. You don't notice this during big events. You notice it in ordinary life. Family conversations, phone notifications, small delays, repeated questions. You still care about people the same way, but your reaction time has shortened, and that creates guilt. You apologize more often. You promise yourself to be calmer next time, yet it keeps happening. Because willpower cannot fix an energy problem, this video is not about controlling anger. It's about understanding why your reactions changed, and how protecting your brain's energy can protect your relationships. The change rarely appears in dramatic arguments. It appears in ordinary days. You wake up already slightly tense, even after a full night in bed. Not exhausted, just not restored. In the morning, you feel normal, functional. But by late morning, small friction begins to accumulate. You reread the same message twice because your focus slips. Background sounds compete for attention. You prefer silence more than you used to. Nothing is wrong, yet your brain feels busier handling the same amount of life. By afternoon, patience becomes selective. You can still handle serious responsibilities, work problems, financial decisions, important conversations, but small interruptions cost more energy than before. Someone asks a simple question while you're concentrating. Your response comes out shorter than intended, not aggressive, just sharper. Later you realize the question itself wasn't stressful. The timing was. Your brain had no spare regulation capacity at that moment. This is why many people after 40 feel confused about their reactions. You're still capable during important moments, but vulnerable during ordinary ones. Evenings become the most revealing time. Family talks to you at the same volume as always, yet it feels louder. Children repeat questions, and your tolerance drops faster than your care. You don't love them less. You simply reach your regulation limit sooner. This creates a strange emotional pattern. You are calm with strangers, professional at work, patient in structured situations, but at home, where you should feel safest, your reactions are shortest. Not because home causes stress, because home is where your brain stops performing. Throughout the day, your nervous system constantly filters noise, decisions, emotions, posture, screens, and social expectations. By night, its filtering energy is depleted. The brain switches from processing mode to protection mode. Protection mode favors speed over nuance, reaction over interpretation, relief over harmony. So the brain reduces delay. Instead of pausing to soften a response, it releases the first available reaction. You experience this as irritability, but internally, it is efficiency under low resources. This is also why you regret it immediately. Your thinking brain catches up seconds later, but the reaction already happened. You promise yourself to be more patient tomorrow, yet tomorrow repeats the same pattern, especially at the same times of day. Because the trigger is not the event. The trigger is cumulative neural fatigue, and the people closest to you are present exactly when your mental energy is lowest. That is why guilt becomes part of midlife emotional experience. You remember who you used to be. Slower to react, easier to tolerate noise, able to listen longer. You think personality changed, but personality rarely changes this precisely by time of day. Energy does. Understanding this difference removes unnecessary self-criticism. You're not becoming harsher. Your brain is operating closer to its limits. The goal is not to suppress reactions by force. The goal is to recognize when your regulation budget is nearly spent before the reaction escapes you. To understand why reactions become faster, you have to look at energy, not attitude. Your brain is not just thinking, it is regulating. Every moment it balances emotion, noise, memory, posture, temperature, social signals, and expectations. Most of this work happens silently, and all of it requires fuel. In younger years, the brain runs with excess regulatory capacity. There is a margin between stimulus and reaction. Something happens, then the brain interprets, then emotion adjusts, then response is chosen. After 40, that margin becomes thinner, not because the brain is weaker, but because it is managing more variables at the same time. Sleep architecture changes first. You may still sleep the same number of hours, but deep restoration becomes shorter. The brain wakes up with partial recovery. You feel awake, but not fully reset. This reduces baseline tolerance before the day even begins. Next comes metabolic efficiency. The brain consumes about 20% of your body's energy. It depends on stable glucose regulation and oxygen delivery. With age, regulation becomes less smooth. Small fluctuations that once went unnoticed now affect cognitive control. You don't feel hungry or dizzy, you feel impatient. Because emotional regulation is one of the most energy-expensive functions in the brain. Then hormonal signaling shifts. Cortisol rhythms flatten slightly. Dopamine responsiveness softens. Serotonin modulation becomes less predictable. None of this causes disease, but together they reduce buffering capacity. The brain compensates. It prioritizes speed over reflection. From a survival perspective, this is efficient. When resources drop, the nervous system shortens evaluation time. Less analysis, faster reaction. Useful in danger, problematic in conversation. You experience it as short temper. Biologically, it is compressed processing latency. Another change occurs in sensory filtering. The thalamus and prefrontal cortex cooperate to filter background information. With mental fatigue, filtering weakens. More signals enter awareness simultaneously, so a normal environment feels louder. Multiple voices feel chaotic. Repeated questions feel intrusive, not emotionally, neurologically. Your brain is handling higher perceived load. This explains a common confusion. You remain calm in emergencies but irritable in routine situations. Emergencies activate focused attention systems. Routine life requires continuous filtering. Continuous filtering costs more long-term energy. By evening, your prefrontal cortex, responsible for restraint, is running on minimal reserve. The emotional brain becomes faster than the reflective brain. Reaction arrives before interpretation. Seconds later, understanding returns, and regret follows. You believe you overreacted. In reality, your regulation timing shifted. You're still choosing your behavior, but the window for choosing became shorter. This is why advice like just be patient often fails after 40. Patience is not only a virtue, it is a metabolic process. When energy availability drops, reaction latency drops with it. Nothing is broken, but the system now requires management instead of assumption. And once you see irritability as timing rather than intention, the solution stops being guilt and starts being regulation support. One of the most confusing parts of midlife irritability is not that it happens, it's when it happens. You can stay composed during meetings, you can be respectful with strangers, you can solve complex problems calmly, but at home, your reactions shorten, and that creates guilt. Because the people you care about the most receive the least filtered version of you. This feels like a character failure, but it is actually a timing problem. Throughout the day, your brain runs in performance mode. You monitor your tone, you select your words, you hold reactions back. Work environments are structured, social rules are clear, your attention is focused. Your brain allocates energy to self-control because the situation demands it. But performance mode is expensive. Every delayed reaction consumes regulation energy. Every polite response costs neurological effort. You don't feel the cost immediately, you feel it later. By the time you arrive home, your brain stops performing. Not because you respect family less, but because safety removes the need for masking. Home is where the nervous system releases held tension. Unfortunately, release does not always appear as relaxation. Sometimes it appears as impatience. Your brain shifts from controlled response to energy conservation. In conservation mode, the system reduces delay. It answers faster, interrupts sooner, corrects quicker. Efficiency increases, softness decreases. This is why a repeated question from a child feels heavier at 8 p.m. than at 10 a.m. The question is identical. Your regulation reserve is not. The same applies to partners. A conversation at night carries accumulated cognitive load from the entire day. Your brain is not evaluating only the sentence you hear. It is processing every unfinished task still active in working memory. So a small disagreement feels disproportionately large, not emotionally, neurologically stacked. Another important detail, you rarely react this way with strangers because strangers appear when your brain temporarily re-engages performance mode. The presence of unfamiliar people automatically increases monitoring, but family interactions occur during recovery mode. Recovery mode has honesty but less buffering. This explains why you regret reactions mostly at home. Your reflective brain returns after the moment passes. You hear your own tone in memory, and it does not match your intention. The intention never changed. The timing did. Understanding this reduces a hidden fear many adults carry. I'm becoming a worse version of myself. You are not. You're experiencing unmasked cognition under fatigue. In younger years, energy allowed both authenticity and gentleness simultaneously. Now, the brain alternates between them. Gentleness requires surplus regulation capacity. Without it, communication becomes efficient rather than soft. This is also why vacations temporarily restore patience. Not because your personality heals, but because regulation reserves refill. Your relationships did not become harder. Your recovery windows became shorter. Once you see irritability as a resource issue, you stop interpreting loved ones as triggers. They are simply present at the moment your brain stops buffering the world. And that is the moment where understanding matters more than blame. Once you understand irritability as an energy pattern, you begin to see repetition. Not random moods, predictable cycles. Most reactions don't depend on people. They depend on timing. You may notice mornings feel neutral. You can tolerate conversation. Background sounds are acceptable. Interruptions don't feel personal. Your brain still has regulatory margin. Late morning changes subtly. You begin to prefer single-task focus. Switching attention becomes slightly uncomfortable. Notifications feel more intrusive than earlier. You're not yet irritated, but your tolerance bandwidth narrows. Afternoon reveals the shift clearly. Decision fatigue accumulates. Each small choice now costs more effort. Replying to messages, planning tasks, remembering details. If someone asks a question while you're thinking, your brain must stop one process to start another. The transition itself becomes stressful. You may answer quickly, not to dismiss the person, but to end the cognitive switching. This is often misinterpreted as emotional impatience. In reality, it is processing friction. Evening becomes the most sensitive period. Your mental inbox is still open. Unfinished items remain active in working memory. The brain tries to recover while still receiving input. This creates a mismatch. Rest is needed. Interaction continues. So the system shortens response delay. You interrupt more. You correct details faster. You prefer quiet over conversation. Not because conversation is unwanted, because recovery is incomplete. You might notice another pattern. Your reactions are strongest when two inputs arrive simultaneously. Someone talks while a screen is active. A question comes while you're calculating something. Noise overlaps with thinking. The brain cannot filter both efficiently anymore. Instead of choosing softly, it rejects quickly. This is protective behavior, not relational judgment. You may also observe good days and short days. On days after deep sleep or lower workload, your patience seems to return. Same family, same conversations, different reaction. That alone proves personality is not the cause. Energy availability is. Many people try to fix irritability by correcting thoughts after reacting, but the reaction occurred before conscious thought. Correction happens seconds later. So improvement cannot start at the moment of reaction. It must start before the margin disappears. Begin noticing the early signals. You reread sentences more often. You sigh at minor delays. You avoid multitasking instinctively. You seek silence. These are not personality quirks. They are low buffer indicators. When ignored, reaction follows. When respected, calm remains. The goal is not to eliminate irritation entirely. The goal is to recognize when your regulation window is closing. Because once the window closes, even kindness becomes effortful. And effortful kindness rarely feels natural, to you or to others. Awareness changes the timeline. Instead of apologizing after speaking, you adjust before responding. That single shift protects relationships more effectively than forcing patience in the moment. Most people try to solve irritability by controlling the reaction. They tell themselves, stay calm, be patient, don't snap. But by the time you say those words internally, the reaction has already formed. Because the reaction is not created in language. It is created in timing. You cannot out-discipline a depleted nervous system, so the solution is not stronger restraint. It is earlier support. Think of regulation like braking distance. When the road is dry, you can stop quickly. When the road is wet, you must slow earlier, not brake harder. After 40, your brain is a wet road system. It still works perfectly, but it needs anticipation instead of force. Start with transition buffers. Most reactions happen during switching moments. Thinking to talking, focus to interruption, task to conversation. Insert a pause before the switch, not a dramatic pause, a breath-length delay. That brief moment allows the reflective brain to catch up with the reactive brain. You're not calming down, you're synchronizing processing speed. Next is sensory reduction. Irritability increases when multiple signals compete. Lowering background load protects regulation capacity. Turn down overlapping audio. Finish one input before accepting another. Create small quiet intervals during the day. You're not avoiding people. You're protecting filtering ability. Then comes expectation timing. Important conversations cost energy. Timing them matters more than wording. Discussions held when your brain is depleted will always feel heavier than necessary. Move meaningful conversations to earlier energy periods whenever possible. Many conflicts are not relational disagreements. They are scheduling errors. Another adjustment, response spacing. You don't have to answer immediately. A short acknowledgement, give me a second, preserves both clarity and tone. Without spacing, the brain answers with whatever is most available. With spacing, it answers with what is most accurate. Recovery windows are essential. Short mental resets during the day extend patience more than long rest after irritation. 30 seconds of visual distance, a brief walk, or closing your eyes momentarily reduces accumulated load. You're not escaping responsibility. You're preventing overflow. Also notice input stacking. Reading, listening, deciding, and talking simultaneously used to feel normal. Now it consumes regulatory reserve rapidly. Sequential attention, one channel at a time, restores steadiness surprisingly fast. None of these changes require personality alteration. They are environmental adjustments aligned with current brain timing. Over time, something interesting happens. You do not feel calmer, you react less often. Calmness becomes a side effect, not a forced state. Because patience is not produced by effort, it is preserved by margin, and margin is created before the moment you think you need it. Once you stop fighting reactions and start managing timing, you regain control without tension, not by becoming different, but by operating according to how your brain now works. Most midlife conflicts are not caused by disagreement. They're caused by misinterpreting reactions. Someone hears your shorter tone and thinks you're upset with them. You feel their distance and assume they are overreacting. Both sides respond to meaning that was never intended. Because reaction speed communicates emotion, even when emotion was not the source. A fast response feels sharp. A delayed response feels thoughtful. But after 40, speed often reflects energy, not attitude. Without understanding this, relationships slowly collect invisible tension. You begin apologizing for moments you don't fully understand. I didn't mean it. I don't know why I said it that way. I was just tired. The other person hears the words but still remembers the tone. Over time, a quiet narrative forms. They believe you're becoming more irritable. You believe they're becoming more sensitive. Both are reacting to the same biological shift without language to explain it. When you explain the mechanism, something important changes. Not excuses, explanation. You can say, "My reactions get faster at night, not because of you, but because my brain is low on regulation energy." This removes personal blame. The conversation shifts from "you hurt me" to "we need better timing." Partners often feel relief hearing this. They stop guessing hidden meanings. They stop scanning every tone for emotional intent. Children benefit even more. Children interpret tone literally. They cannot distinguish fatigue from rejection. A quick correction can feel like anger to them, even if your emotion was neutral. When they understand that adults also have tired brains, they learn emotional context, not fear. You're teaching regulation by naming limits. You might say, "My brain is full right now. Ask me again in a minute." This models self-awareness instead of suppression. They learn that reactions are signals, not judgments. Another shift happens inside you. Instead of analysing past conversations repeatedly, you recognise timing patterns. You stop replaying sentences in your head at night, wondering why they sounded harsher than intended. Because you know, the message and the delivery came from different energy states. This reduces guilt. Guilt consumes energy, and ironically increases future irritability. Understanding breaks that cycle. You no longer try to become endlessly patient. You become strategically available. Presence becomes more consistent even if interactions are shorter. People feel safer with predictable calm than with long conversations followed by sudden reactions. Short, attentive responses build more trust than extended, distracted ones. You also begin planning connection differently. Instead of waiting until the end of the day to talk, you choose moments when your regulation capacity is higher. A 10-minute morning conversation often prevents a 30-minute evening misunderstanding. Quality replaces endurance. You're not avoiding emotional closeness. You're placing it where the brain can support it. Over months, relationships become lighter. Not because life becomes easier, but because interpretation becomes accurate. Family members stop personalizing neurological timing. You stop criticizing yourself for normal limits. The emotional climate softens. You still have imperfect moments, but they no longer define the relationship, because now everyone understands. Reaction speed is not always intention. Tone is not always belief. And patience is not only kindness, it is supported by biology. When people understand this together, they cooperate with reality instead of fighting each other. And many conflicts disappear not by solving problems, but by removing misinterpretations that never needed to exist. In younger years, maturity often means pushing through. You stay up later, you multitask more, you handle noise, pressure, interruptions, and still respond gently. Capacity feels invisible because it is abundant. So you build an identity around endurance. You believe patience comes from personality, You believe calm comes from character. You believe reacting quickly means losing control. Then midlife arrives, and the same effort produces different results. You try harder to stay composed, yet reactions appear sooner. This creates a quiet internal conflict. If I care, why can't I always respond the way I want? The answer is not emotional weakness. It is capacity awareness. After 40, the skill that replaces endurance is regulation management. You stop asking, how much can I handle, and begin asking, when can I handle it best? This shift changes everything, because pushing beyond limits does not increase strength anymore. It reduces stability. The brain adapts differently now. Instead of expanding tolerance through exposure, it preserves balance through timing. Ignoring this leads to a cycle. You exceed capacity, then react, then regret, then promise to try harder, then repeat. Respecting it creates a different cycle. You notice limits, adjust timing, respond clearly, feel steady. Nothing about your values changes. Only your method does. You start planning energy like you once planned time, not rigidly, but intentionally. You group demanding tasks together. You separate thinking from conversation. You allow mental closure before emotional interaction. Small changes produce disproportionate calm, because stability does not come from suppressing reaction. It comes from preventing overload. Another realization appears. Many traits you admired in older adults were not personality differences. They were pacing strategies. They paused before answering. They avoided simultaneous conversations. They chose fewer but fuller interactions. What once seemed like temperament was actually regulation wisdom. Midlife invites you into the same wisdom, not withdrawal, selectivity. You do not become less caring. You become less scattered. You stop measuring patience by how long you tolerate discomfort. You measure it by how rarely you create it. There is freedom in accepting limits. You no longer interpret every reaction as failure. You interpret it as information, a signal that timing, input, or recovery was insufficient. And signals guide adjustment, not shame. This also changes how you see others. When someone responds sharply, you consider capacity before intention. Empathy becomes practical instead of abstract. You realize many daily tensions are simply overlapping fatigue. Conversations soften when both sides assume humanity before judgment. You also discover something unexpected. Life feels quieter, not because the world changed, but because you stopped forcing your brain to behave like it did decades ago. You work with it instead of against it. Gentleness returns not by effort, but by alignment. You speak slower without thinking about it. You listen longer without strain. You need fewer apologies. And the relationships that matter most feel easier again. Not perfect, but natural. Midlife is often described as decline, but in reality it is a transition from unlimited reaction to intentional response. You're not losing control, you're learning precision. And precision, unlike endurance, creates calm that lasts beyond the moment. Many people spend years trying to become calmer. They monitor their tone, they rehearse better responses, they promise themselves to react differently next time, and for a moment it works. Until the same situation appears at the same time of day, with the same level of mental fatigue. Then the same reaction returns, not because you failed, but because you tried to correct behavior without supporting the system producing it. Calmness is not created in the moment of irritation. It is created hours before it, in sleep quality, in mental spacing, in timing conversations, in respecting limits before they are crossed. Once you understand this, self-control stops feeling like a constant battle. You stop fighting your brain and start cooperating with it. Some days you will still react faster than you want. That will not disappear completely. But the difference is important. You will recognize it sooner. You will recover faster, and you will stop turning single moments into long emotional weight. Midlife does not remove patience. It removes unused reserve. And when reserve becomes intentional, calm becomes reliable. Not perfect, reliable. You do not need to become a different person to protect your relationships. You only need to work with the way your mind now regulates energy. If this explanation helped you understand your reactions, or someone close to you, stay with the channel. Future videos will continue exploring how small biological changes quietly shape daily life after 40, and how understanding them can make life lighter, not heavier. Sometimes clarity itself reduces tension, and often, understanding is the first form of calm.